Good morning, everybody, and a huge welcome to all of you listening to our fabulous panel, and a welcome to our second event in this partnership with UK Construction Week, where today we focus on BAME retention in the built environment. And this isn't about talking, this is about actions. It's enough talk, time for practical action. I'm Rebecca Lovelace. I'm the Chief Dock Joiner at Building People, and I will just be providing a quick introduction to Building People, and also just then introducing to the panel and very much participating and listening and learning in this conversation we're going to be having next. So just to talk through very quickly the joys of screen sharing. Here we are. This is not about Building People. This is about all of us. So please do help us make some noise, help us bring about change. We've listed here the various social media places where Building People is wonderfully active. So please do join in. We're really keen that this isn't a broadcast, so do use the chat functionality on Construction Week's platform to share your thoughts, to provide answers to the questions that we're asking, and also to ask questions. We won't be able to respond to everything, but what we are doing is capturing every point made, every suggestion, every comment. And on Friday, we are feeding back to everybody with the outcomes of 9 events we're running this week. So 9 events, all capturing actions for change, to change the culture of our industry. We launched, as Building People, we launched our crowdfunder yesterday. And what really does make me excited, I overuse the word, but I am excited, is key to Building People is it's us sharing our technology. So this morning we are crowdfunding to integrate the Building People platform with the website of DiverseCity Surveyors, which you'll hear more about during this conversation. And the aim is that Building People simply sits underneath the website, the DiverseCity Surveyors website, and enables it to do more, to have access to a mentoring program, a listing of jobs, listings of activities, etc. So more on that soon, but we are crowdfunding. We want you to be part of this. We want you to make a noise. So what I will just briefly do is I will introduce our fabulous panel. So panel, if you could please just turn your cameras on, and you can stay muted for now. And what I'm going to do is make my screen just a little bit more clever so that we can see everybody. And what I would like to do is just briefly say a hello to everybody, and then I'll talk through Building People, and we'll then go into the panel discussion. So a huge hello to Ayo Ajayi, first of all, to Alan Wanga, Bola Abisogun, Deirdre Toussaint, Lyra Gonzalez, and Terry Watts, and you'll hear more about them and their organisations. But this is our fabulous panel, and I am so pleased to have you all with us. Thank you so much. So panel, if you're happy just to turn cameras off, I'll do a quick introduction to Building People, and then I'll stop sharing my screen. It'll be over to you. Thank you very much. So here we go. This is where we started. Please don't take the slide literally. We call it our spaghetti slide. This was the slide we created in 2017 when Building People started. It's a mess out there. It's fragmented, it's not collaborative, and it's therefore inefficient and costly. There is a lot of activity taking place focused on diversity and inclusion, on skills and on social value, but the activity is not joined up. So very simply, this is what Building People is doing, is joining up what is happening already. That's the simple, what it looks like in 2017. It's looked like that for many a year before. And what we're doing with Building People is, as well as having some nice clean lines for all the architects out there, it's a simple idea that the individual can find the organisation that provides help. So we found over 300 of them on our platform. And these are the organisations that have that reach into diverse audiences. And they work with that organisation, and the organisation engages with the employer. And the alternative, the added value, is that the individual can work with the organisation, but they might find the organisation through Building People. So in the case of DiverseCity Surveyors, the individual could come onto the Building People platform and say, show me organisations that work particularly with BAME people in the surveying profession. And Building People would say, here's a list of organisations. Off you go and work with them. And what we're seeking to do through Building People is that our technology here underpins the website here. And that then gives organisations like Diversity Surveyors access to a shared repository of vacancies, of events, of courses, of podcasts, of games, of mentors. It's quite simply joining the dots. That's all we're trying to do. So very briefly, I'll just show you what we have achieved with Building People. I'm not going to go into the detail, but this is what we call our 6-button approach. So we have here an opportunity to find, as I say, 300 plus organisations that provide support to find work experience, to find jobs, to find mentors, to find courses, to find bursaries and PPE. We have a partnership with Designing Buildings Wiki, and what we brought together here is content. So content focused on diversity and inclusion, on skills and careers, and on social value. We've created an e-mentoring module, and this is about asking somebody, can you help me? I've got a job interview coming up. What advice could you give? Or where could I go to pursue these opportunities? It's those conversations where we in industry can share our experience and expertise, but also we can ask questions, as can anybody. We have listings of activities, events, courses, training, and listings of everything from work experience through to apprenticeships and jobs, and also resources. And what we've done is the 4 here are specific to surveying, because this is our prototype, this is where we've started, and the 2 here are very much focused on the built environment. We plan to take Building People to every trade and every profession. We're after your help to make that happen. And the way in which we're going to do it is by partnering with organisations such as Diversity Surveyors so that we can help them do more. We've also created an opportunity to access directories of diverse businesses. So these are the organisations that have done the hard work already. So Black Professionals in Construction has a portal of BAME-owned contractors and consultants. And Stopcox is creating a register of tradeswomen. We just want to help people find them. And lastly, on Building People, what we've also created is what we call our network of networks. And these are the organisations that have this reach into these communities that are underrepresented in our industry. So, for example, within our BAME community, we have these organisations that we spend time with. We come together, we share thoughts, ideas, and this is about achieving more and achieving more collaboratively. Last 2 slides, I'll hand over to Bola and the gang. What we have done is we've evidenced how you can replicate the Building People platform. If you go onto the Construction Industry Council's Roadmap for Change and you look at My Resources, what you see is a small icon powered by Building People. And the Roadmap for Change is quite simply pulled through content that's relevant to it from the Building People shared repository. So that platform that the 6 buttons I showed you, they pulled through what's relevant to them, which means anybody else can also access this equally through Building People. And finally, the Chartered Surveyors Training Trust. So this is the website of the CSTT, and what they have done is they have adopted our 6-button approach. So you'll recognise some of this, that this is being drawn through Building People. So the resources that the Roadmap for Change has pulled through, some of these might also be accessible here. Otherwise, they're different because they're aimed at the young people that CSTT works in, specifically in surveying. And then the other elements you've seen, now CSTT users can easily find work opportunities by going to one place, which in this case is CSTT, but it's powered by and underpinned by Building People. So that's enough about Building People. I'm going to stop sharing my screen and I will ask our fabulous panel to please, cameras on and microphones on as well. We've introduced the panel briefly, and the aim now is to very much have a conversation about BAME in the built environment. We want you please to engage, so I will be turning to look at my other screen to look at our chat box. We also have a Q&A function, so please do put your comments in, put your ideas in. If we ask a question, answer the question. As I say, we'll capture all of it. And please just do engage with us. So this is going to be fantastic, and I'm going to start off by really, I suppose, Bola, is it as easy as one simple answer? What is the real issue around BAME retention, or is it, certainly it's not just one simple answer, but tell us your immediate thoughts.
Well, first of all, thank you, Rebecca, for the opportunity to participate again. Special thanks to Nathan Garnett of UK Construction Week for allowing us to host it with Building People. And obviously my co-pilot, Terry Watts, at Chartered Surveyors Training Trust. You know, we're here for another conversation. And, you know, to answer your question, really, I wanted to contextualize why we're here and explain why the title is about enough talk, time for action. So I wanted to take us back to 2009 when I chaired the EHRC Race Discrimination in Construction Inquiry report. And back then we had a very similar conversation. And just to give it some context, our recommendations of that report spoke about a number of different things. Leadership and governance. And on leadership and governance, we suggested an increased understanding of difference, the business case, setting standards and monitoring data, promoting the industry as an employer. On procurement, we suggested more engagement of Section 106 social value clauses, for example. On employment and skills, we spoke about monitoring progress of trainees and students, very critical at the moment given the current climate. We spoke about trying to reduce and replace word of mouth recruitment, which is still pandemic at the moment. And on data and monitoring, we spoke about developing a consistent approach to data collection. And now in 2020, we are talking about the same thing. And just to embellish that point, I want to give credit and credence to my colleagues at Estates Gazette, and in particular, Samantha McCleary and Lucy Alderson, with special thanks to Priya Shah for making the recommendation. So last week, on the 1st of October, they carried out and published the first race diversity survey for 2020. And a number of startling statistics again. Is racism an issue in property? 67% said yes. Does the industry have a problem with BAME retention? 61% of respondents said yes. Is property generally trying to increase BAME retention? 65% said no. And have you experienced racism as a general question? 68% said yes. So it is time for practical action now. I don't have the answers, but I'm willing to participate in the conversation. So on the basis of that intro and landscape backdrop to why we're here today and why my fellow peers and the panelists are also on the conversation, I want to say that I don't have the answers at all, but I am passionate about solutions, what we can all do to turn this, in my case, 11-year conversation into a series of tangible outcomes. You know, the statistics don't lie. I've been in this space, regrettably, for almost half my professional career of nearly 27 years. So today, I'd like to ask the panel, starting with Aya, rising star. Aya, what's your view on how can we change this constant reference to we need change, but how? How can we start that process?
Like you say, Bola, with regards to answers, you know, there's many dialogues. You know, I've had the dialogue with yourself, we've had dialogue looking in, looking out and trying to find a solution. I do think there's a number of steps that can be taken to change, but before I even start, it's worth acknowledging that some of the points that I've got relate to, you know, the points that you've just made in relation to 2009 when you were looking at those steps. So I guess the actual application of seeing it all the way through maybe has not happened, but I'll start with my personal view. So for me, I'll just go straight in with regards to what I think is an issue, and a lot of it is representation. right? So accountability, representation, allowing people to progress to senior positions, because I guess, you know, credit where credit is due. There has been some progress. The tide is changing, especially when you look at, you know, barriers to entry, and I'm talking around surveying. You know, you're seeing that with regards to apprentices, you know, the stats on apprenticeships, and you know, when you look at the ethnicity spread across people coming in, actually there's some good news being done, you know, with regards to ethnicity as well as gender. You know, that progresses forwards to graduates as well, but kind of beyond there, you do see an issue. Also, when I look at other organizations, I guess, you know, you look at the whole BAME spread, and then, you know, you take out support staff, you take out, you know, and then you look at the core, you know, kind of professional staff, you know, RICS accredited, and then the numbers dwindle even more. So for me, it's representation, and therefore I think, you know, responsibility, accountability is key. And, you know, over the years, I've been, you know, I'm still not fully for quotas, but I do see benefit, you know, and yeah. I look at I think about, you know, where the issue with regards to gender, and the whole program and the progress, crucially, the progress that's happened from the problem being identified, and there's still work to be done in that field, but you can really, you know, you can judge it and you can see it. And that's where I think maybe quotas or targets can help us to also achieve. I know that some of the big, large professional companies who are, again, also having this issue, looking at KPMG, looking at Deloitte, who have set some really, really bold targets. So if you look at KPMG, for example, they're looking to double the amount of Black partners in the next 2 years. You've got Deloitte that are pledging to have at least 12% of their partners, but in the next 5 years to be of BAME heritage, and 3% to be Black in the next 5 years. So I do think that the quotas or the target or the actual intentionality of the task is very important, because, you know, the whole adage is, if you can't be it, you know, if you can't see it, sorry, you can't be it.
Absolutely. Fabulous. Deirdre, I'm going to go to you, given that unfortunately, well, actually, it's not bad gender spread on the call today. So I want to give you, as a successful Black chartered surveyor, what's your view, and how can we change the game?
That is the million-dollar question there, Bola, isn't it? Because I think from my perspective, change only comes if there is an acceptance or a recognition that there is a need for change in the very first instance. Yeah. So to the results of the survey, which you alluded to earlier, it does vary quite a bit depending on who is asked the question. And if we do not have a collective understanding or collective acceptance within the industry that there are areas for change, then it is very difficult for us to collectively address that change. Yeah. And I would dare say that over the years, I certainly have not been a part of this movement for as long as you have, but I do, it really does pain me to hear you say that this has been a dedicated effort for so long, and that you cannot, you know, put your hand on the heart and say, well, yes, this is how far we've come. We're not able to measure what we've done. And that is amazingly concerning, to be honest. And I have spent quite a few years working with young persons, either on a community basis or, you know, via the secondary school system. And it is my experience here in the UK working with young persons within the school system is still fairly young and fairly new. However, there are repetitive and recurring questions and challenges which occur. So more to your question in terms of how do we actually address some change and how do we enact some change? It really has to do with, first of all, admitting that there is a need for change and collectively putting our heads together to have measurable actions that we can all target and measure ourselves, because as human beings, we do appreciate that we would like to move forward together. We do appreciate that, and we do agree on that in general. You know, my work colleagues are sometimes my greatest supporters. However, when it comes to the actual areas, you know, that matter, and certainly matter to me, they are either not able to or not in a position to enact something which will change my life in an effective way. So it is a partnership which stems from people and working with people and understanding ourselves as individuals, appreciating our differences, and working towards changing what needs to be changed so that everyone shines.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned building people. You know, this is the beauty about what building people is trying to do, and again, it's why, you know, building people are crowdfunding for change. You know, we are part of their evolving ecosystem of change, and so it's critical that, you know, I think the easiest action today can be that listeners, observers donate to the crowdfund currently ongoing. The donations can be small, they can be large, but they just need to happen. So we're pleading with observers and listeners to fund this evolving ecosystem of structural and systemic change. And to that point, Alan, I want to bring you in. What's your view on what we can do, given that you are a part of an incredible firm called CBRE? They're doing amazing things, lots of great people. What's your view? How can you influence from your position of strength, given what you do at CBRE?
Thank you, Bola. There's several things we can do, and there's several things we can look at, and there's several things the CBRE is doing. But from a personal point of view, taking you back to the survey you've just mentioned, the EG survey that was carried out. I mean, there's some stats you've left out, but just to say, having looked at that survey, it is shocking and it's very painful. Not shocking to me because we've been aware of these issues. I think the critical issue from that survey that we need to pick up on as businesses, business owners, is that the board directors need to get uncomfortable. They need to look at this survey and actually take something out of it and act. And this challenge goes to the business strategies. Yeah. Those business strategies need to take action, move away from the lip service, because all these strategies cover ED&I, they cover all this, but they don't take action. So there needs to be accountability from the board directors to say, these are the stats, this is what we're dealing with, this is how we are going to act. And there has to be visible results through that accountability. Yeah. And the other thing is, you know, again, picking up on the survey, I think the survey went out to about 191 board directors.
Correct.
And I think 83 to 85% that replied were all white board directors. 81% were, you know, white board directors. And for me, that informs me that businesses are missing out on a huge talent pool. And we're on this platform trying to say, look, we want to be at the table. Let the doors open wider. Let's sit at the table. And we're telling businesses you're missing out on a huge talent pool. There are great talented people from the BAME community ready to bust out, but they just need that recognition, that support, that mentoring, that guidance that is provided elsewhere to get people there. And at the end of the day, businesses are there to make money, but if you don't use your full capacity to tap into a resource that's readily available, then there's an issue.
I think if I can just chip in there, just
please.
A great observation. So Roma Agrawal has put a great quote or comment in the chat. I'm just going to read out. So just commenting on her experience, bad behaviours are dismissed and minimised as jokes by those in power who tend to be white men, until the people in the majority can humbly listen and accept the point of view of the minorities, I think change will be very slow. And I think
Absolutely.
for me, that word humbly, that in our industry, it's a competitive, challenging, macho, white male dominated industry. And do you think that's true? That until the people in the majority can humbly listen and accept the point of view of the minorities, I think change will be very slow. Would you agree with that?
Yes, I do, Rebecca. Oh, sorry.
Go ahead, Alan, please.
Yeah, yes, Rebecca, and that's what I was alluding to, that until those uncomfortable conversations are had, and those uncomfortable conversations happen, change is going to be slow. I'm very excited that we're even having these conversations now, because the stats there's some surveys out there. Let's try and have these uncomfortable conversations to effect change. And until that happens, it's going to be slow. A lot of great strides have been made, but I think now we need to act. Businesses need to act. Listen to the conversations, take the stats away, and act.
Larry, please, you're nodding.
Yeah, no,
please.
absolutely. I totally agree with what Alan's saying. But for me, Deirdre's sort of hit the nail on the head. Until particular businesses or business leaders acknowledge that a change needs to take place, then it is going to be very slow and painful. I mean, first of all, those business leaders that are in the position need to change, look to change the culture of the business and change hearts and minds. And also, if that means, dare I say, plucking out particular individuals within the business that perhaps have either conscious or unconscious bias or certain perceptions of BAME from the BAME community, and use that in order to stop them from getting a job within the business or even progressing. So I think until that sort of comes about, then it's going to be very, very difficult.
I agree. I mean, I've spoken with everyone on this call individually, and I'm not frustrated, but I've got to be honest, I'm disappointed. Not for me, I'm disappointed for the younger surveyors that are coming behind me. They keep asking, Bola, what else can we do? You're trying. But, one person can't do it. Again, coming back to building people. It's an ecosystem. We're a strength and we're growing, but we've got to learn to collaborate. We're in an industry where we all do business with each other, but we don't really collaborate. We don't really share. We don't really care. But actually, we can't keep talking about this. We've got to get to the point where, like you've all said, you've got to act. Someone's got to act. And actually, it starts with you individually. And on the point of acting, you all know I'm working very closely with RICS now. And we created what I call a historic moment on the 14th of August this year, where RICS affirmed publicly that they're going to support the wider needs, aspirations, etc., for Black professionals in particular, in the context of the BAME piece. And as a Black professional, and given the call I had just yesterday with Sean Tompkins, Richard Collins, and Aisha Ofori, my next question really is about data. Now, forgive me, I'm a quantity surveyor, so numbers make sense or not for that matter. But what is it about data? What is the data, that's referred to in the Estates Gazette Race Diversity Survey? What is the data that we need to collect that businesses need to act on? And the low-hanging fruit there is the ethnicity pay gap. Great, we can park that. But what is the data around people that we need to collect to further endorse and embellish the business case that, in my case, an opinion, has existed for nearly 15 years, right? What is the data today that we need to collect? And I'll start with you, Alan. And I know CBRE are doing some stuff in this space already. That's why I'm picking on you. So, but what is the data? What do we need to collect?
I think the main, first and foremost, the data we need to collect is understand the numbers of BAME people within the business.
Okay.
I think that's critical.
Yeah.
And secondly, understand their professional development. What is set up to enable those professionals to grow within the business, and what strategies are in place to encourage them to even take the bigger leap of getting into directorship or leading sectors or markets within the business. CBRE is a big company, for example. And thirdly, how many people are coming through internships from the BAME community, and how are we retaining them? Because the key is retention. People need to come and feel excited about taking on their specified professions. We all started off excited. I wanted to be a quantity surveyor. I wanted to do amazing things.
I'm still excited, by the way. I'm still excited.
Bola, I don't believe you, but yeah, if you say so.
I could never be excited about numbers. Sorry.
But how and what are we doing to retain this talent? And I think those are for me, those are the three key numbers that need to have some sort of strategy within organizations. And then from then on, you can execute the plan based on that information.
Alan, can I just come in on that? I suppose really to ask a question. We as you know, building people, we have currently 6 communities, of which the BAME community is one. And certainly in the women community and LGBTQ+, there's questions about, we don't have sufficient data, and I think it's recognised. So there's sort of the figures get trotted out. So I think it's sort of 1%, possibly 2% of women actually working on the tools, and BAME is something shocking, which I don't want to quote because I'm going to get it wrong. So I'll look to Bola for that one. But I think my question is then, who does this? Who does this research? And we've certainly committed as part of the crowdfunder that the money coming into the communities can be put against this research. So building people, because we have this holistic view that it's not about one trade or one profession. And that's certainly something we would seek to do. But there are bigger voices, and there are more well-funded and more established organisations. Panel, I mean, who would you say, where does the responsibility sit? Because we want to come up with tangible actions here, and data capture is important, but where does this sit? Who should be doing this?
Well, look, great question, but I wanted to give Terry a chance to come in because I saw it.
No.
Please.
Thank you, Bola. Yeah. It's always difficult to interrupt Rebecca on flow, I know. But I always wanted to make the point as a minority on the panel that I hope the audience who are listening to this are more reflective of the industry than of the BAME community, because as much as I think we've got 2 roles here, we need to encourage their colleagues who are part of the BAME community within the built environment that they're not alone, that things do need to improve. It's a recognised issue, but also that there's an awful lot of evidence, I think, that we look at lived experience for those kinds of stories. What I'd really like to hear, not today, but I think we need to find a way of capturing people's lived experience of being a Black and minority ethnic person in this sector, because I think a lot of people just don't know what it's like. I include myself in that, although I have spoken to a lot of you individually, and I've got other people I work with, but there's amazing amount of, and I was struck just yesterday, slightly different off-topic thing. There was an interview on the PM program as I was driving back from London yesterday, and there was a young Black woman who, I think Nigerian origin, who had been at Cambridge University for her first year, and she explained some of the things that happened to her at Cambridge University from people in the academic profession, and she was in tears, and it was heartbreaking to hear that someone who had obviously steeled themselves to be in that environment and was doing, what every young person wants to do, was facing such prejudice at a learned education. And I'm sure Cambridge isn't this. I don't want to call them out as being bad, because they've made huge progress and they're still trying to do more. Yeah. But I'm struck by the fact that it was a good result from your survey in that 60+% people recognise the issue, yet 80% of those people were white. And so that means there are people in leadership positions in organizations who recognize there are issues in property for Black and minority ethnic people. So that's a good thing to take from it. The bad thing is, you talked about going back to 2009, and that's kind of when I got involved in the sector as well. But if you look at the history of the sector, there have been top-down surveys of what we need to do to improve the sector. The oldest one I found was 1935. And they come out every 5 to 10 years, and they're great bits of documentation. They talk about how we're going to change, and it's talk about top-down change, and it's never happened. We've still got the same issues now, and they weren't so much focused about people and minority ethnic groups, but there are other issues that are still in the industry about the collaboration and the financials and all those things, misogyny, all those things still exist, and gradually edging towards them. So we've got to find a different way of tackling the issues. It's not going to be top-down. It's got to be bottom up, and it's got to be all those people running those small 420,000, I think it is, companies in the built environment. Those leaders of each of those companies has got to recognize it, and almost having. So it's my responsibility as much as it's yours, and it's everybody else's responsibility collectively. It's not down to the minority ethnic groups to do it. It's not down to the leaders of industry to do it. It's down to everybody to do it, because there will be people out there who work in sizable companies where there are no minority ethnic employees. And they should ask, well, why aren't there? Are we doing the right things? Is it something that we're doing that's stopping that happening? And calling out the casual racism, the casual discrimination that goes on at all levels and all age and gender and ethnic minority. And we need to try and really get the groundswell, which is why I'm involved in building people, because the top down hasn't worked for the last 70, 80 years. We need to do it bottom up, and that's why we all need to work together on this. That's my rant.
Well said, Terry. I'm just going to do a little prod to the audience, and please do put your comments, thoughts, ideas, suggestions. So what tangible actions for change would you like to see happen? Please put them in the chat. Thank you, Roma. Roma's engaging this, a great suggestion that's saying that all board members should read Why I'm No Longer Talking to White People About Race. Couldn't agree more. I think you're involved with the AFBE. Yeah, we certainly want to be talking to the AFBE more in terms of building people. I just thought, actually, Terry, on your point, as the audience, if people just fancy chucking into the chat, what's your ethnicity, what's your role? It'd be really interesting to know who's joined in. Is it allies? Is it? I mean, just tell us a little bit about yourself. Just throw it in the chat if you're happy to, and just do please keep engaging.
I think just going back to your point, Rebecca, about intersectionality, it's the sphere of the conversation that doesn't get spoken about. So if you, as I often say, if you add ethnicity to just two strands, sexual orientation and gender, and we have an example, a perfect example in Deirdre right here, it's an exponential discourse, an exponential disadvantage. And that's the perspective at leadership level that really needs to be spoken about and highlighted. To Alan's point about data, who's coming through, what do they need to make it happen, and how can we sustain it? Because actually, Alan made a great point about retention, and I've said it many times. We're talking about career opportunities, people coming into the sector. Coming in isn't really the challenge. Staying in is the biggest challenge. Staying in and excelling according to your skill set, that is the biggest challenge for BAME, and dare I say other groups, but we're talking about BAME today. So retention, to do that well, like I said yesterday, emotional intelligence needs to become part of the conversation. We need to task our leadership about being better people managers, not managers of the process, people managers. And at the moment, we're failing miserably. So I know, Leary, you're a STEM ambassador. What more can we do with the younger generation? Because the younger generation have a tendency to say it as it is. That's why I just get excited about being around them. They say it as it is. So they would challenge you according to what they see, innocently or naively, what they see. So with what you've done, the work you've done in schools and with the STEM community, what do you think we can do to enlighten them so that they are equipped to maybe challenge some of the leaders they will come into contact with as they progress through the sector?
Yeah, well, yeah, that's a very difficult question, but and I think really what's clearly enlightening when you go into schools or into universities and speak to students that are thinking about joining the profession or the industry. They don't see many of our people, many BAME people within those positions. So they don't really believe in the first instance they're able to progress one or join that sort of industry because of one of the perceptions they have, or even with the environment or the community around them. So that's a bit of a challenge, really, to try and encourage them into the industry.
Anything else that you can maybe pitch towards RICS, for example? I mean, how do you think we can get
and I think, most definitely. I think in order to as we spoke about before, with regards to the big talent pool, to encourage that. I mean, the RICS or businesses or the industries should be going into schools and you know, almost encouraging that untold talent, that there is an alternative career, or in terms of the talents that you do have, then you know this could be the profession for you.
And just to say, RICS are going into schools. I mean, and in actual fact, Chancery Training Trust, the Worshipful Company, are embarking on a massive schools drive.
Yeah,
really.
I just think more businesses need to do that. You know, because I think within the schools, the difficulty is that careers advisors in schools have a pretty tough job, because they're looking at careers probably from a more with an academic point of view. Some may have lost sight or lost contact within what's really going on within the industry. One or two schools that I've been into is that the head teachers or the careers teachers knew nothing about the RICS, or even knew what a building surveyor actually did. Yeah. So, and I think again, the industry has really got a duty to be going into schools, encouraging them and telling them what a great profession or industry it is to be joining.
Yeah, fabulous points. Well, look, on rising stars and future owners, business owners. I mean, Ayo, you're at Colliers, senior level, director level now. You know, congratulations, very proud of what you've achieved. And in that context, if you had control of the industry for a day, what would you mandate business owners to do to, if not address, then support this conversation about BAME retention? What would you mandate that every business owner, every business leader by definition, what would you mandate that they do to help?
Good question, Bola.
What a question.
Yeah, I have a few more questions lined up, so maybe me afterwards.
I'll just hold that thought, big man, please.
No, go. I go and come back to me afterwards. I'll read out the questions from the audience.
Okay.
No pressure.
So, like I say, Bola, a very loaded question. I mean, so I'm Tony Harrell for the day, and I must say, whilst we touched on my role at Colliers, appreciate that, you know, amongst other. So I look at my peers and look at my other, you know, dare I say, rival companies. You know, it's not familiar that you see, you know, a black director in position. So it's something that is, you know, whilst to strive to get there, it can be quite isolating at times. But you know, Colliers have really given me some support, actually, I must say, and I've been working with senior leadership now to have these conversations. So only last week, you know, we held a Windrush Generation event. You know, had panelists, just again, education, and this is, you know, the conversations are happening and things are trickling through. To answer your question, I think there's a number of reasons. You know, my first initial, I've already spoken about targets and where we need to be, because like I said, in terms of where you need to be, you know, you need to see it to be it. And I'll touch on some of the other things that I've said. So I myself, you know, from the first early outset of me starting in the profession back in 2007, I believe. I've always been involved in going back to community, going to schools, but not just having, you know, credit to everyone that is going to schools, credit to the recruitment advice, the career advisors, kudos to other organizations. You know, you need to see similar people, unfortunately, you know, to really relate. And I found, you know, some people are shocked, you know, they don't know what a quantity surveyor is, but, you know, at the time I was a lot younger than I am now. Maybe my lingo was more in tune with, you know, some of the words they're saying, and they could see someone just like them, grew up on an estate, and can speak. So for me, it's representation for me is still so key, because I have conversations with people during the industry, and you talk about retention, and this is something that's really difficult, because I look at my peers, and, you know, I've been at big firms, you know, I've been at, and you can see waves of graduate level, you know, they've all started in the same year, you know, they've progressed. Then you can see that year becoming partners or becoming, you know, senior members in business. And yes, you know, people move and it happens, but you can see the natural evolution amongst peer groups. You know, some might take a year or two beyond, but you can generally see that. What I see in the industry as I go through in terms of my peers is people leaving industry. So you either going to leave industry full stop, or be forced into self-employment, or going about your own. And, you know, there's a bit about ownership, and people are entrepreneurial and want to, but there are many that are forced to. So to answer your question, and I know I'm going around this, you know, dedicated resources, because we talk about the microaggressions, we talk about white people wanting to help, but I just think, you know, the survey results have definitely shown they just don't quite understand it, and they don't understand the barriers. So really stepping in my shoes, understanding what it's like to have a graduate, you know, who's, and we talk about progression through the ranks, but something that is, you know, really firm in my heart is, you know, you might have a white graduate who, you know, is, I think they're afforded a bit more time. So, you know, oh, you know, it's youthful exuberance. So it's this, you know, that, you know, they'll be given time. But if you don't fully understand, or you've never really understood the issues that someone is grown up with, or understand what they're facing on a daily basis, you know, work is one section, but, you know, in society and in their lives, you can't really empathize or understand, you know, why things are being done. So therefore, you know, there's normally blockers and issues in terms of empathy and progression. So I know I'm going around because it's not a straightforward answer. So
you're doing great. You're doing great. Come on now, you're doing great.
So I think dedicated resources for performance leaders as well as managers, you know, so make them understand, you know, put them on traineeship. I think for the big firms, talking about Colliers, you're talking about CBRE, I think you need some full-time resource, you know. I think enough is the time of just having someone whose job, you know, someone at HR is, you know, 1 day a week looking at diversity. You need a dedicated resource who can give. You need independent expertise, independent challenge. So, you know, also don't just rely on staff who's got their day jobs, who then have to take on this burden, and get someone independent, get somebody who has market leading support and can provide that challenge. I've talked about the progression, the steps, and making sure that, you know, there's clear, measurable targets. Engage really with Black talent, you know, engage, understand. We're talking about the tracking of numbers. Like I said, it's really important, and I say that from a viewpoint of working at the Deloittes, working at the at the Colliers, where, you know, you might look at the numbers across the spread, and, you know, it looks maybe more favorable when you look at BAME. But when you look at the Black, and then again, when you strip out the support staff and talk about the issue in the industry, it gets even worse, all right? So therefore, you know, tracking these people, you know, so who's junior, so who's grads, at what level are they, and how are they progressing? I think that's an important, you know, stat to also know at every annually, whenever it may be, you also always know, and you're able to track that progress through. I think that is key. And finally, it's the accountability. So whilst you're measured on, you know, your turnover, your profit, I think this is something that also needs to be taken on, and board leaders, you know, CEOs need to take personal accountability and responsibility for the action. So long-winded, you know, but like I say, a loaded question there, Bola.
Loaded because you're talented and you did well. Resource and accountability is what I take away from that. Deirdre, you know, you are in control of the entire sector. what would you mandate leadership to do?
Well, I would tackle things from the perspective of we are part of a wider community. We aren't in this individually, in as much as business is dedicated to making profits, certainly, but the profits cannot be had unless there are projects which stem from communities and stem from different areas. So there has to be a recognition by business that the community that we operate in and generate our fees needs to be reflected within our business structure itself. So I think for a very large part, we are within an environment or within an industry which is ideally situated and ideally placed to capture creativity, to capture diversity. The very assets that we create is in its very nature diverse and never the same. And we do have that opportunity to bring in different ideas and embrace different ideas and different points of views and different ways of delivering, you know, that particular asset. So it is that recognition that there is value in having a diverse view. There is value which can eventually translate into profit margins and the bottom line, and also that it's not just a corporate social responsibility approach or a tick box approach to show that we are actually diverse, so we are recruiting, but we are actively trying to connect our communities with our business and make that a lasting and partnership, as it were, which can only be good for business in general. So I suppose as a hopefully director for the future and a business owner for the future, I really would want to focus on making my business a good reflection of the communities that I operate within, and actually celebrating that a lot more, because I think what is lacking quite a lot within our industry is the fact that there are persons on the ground who are doing quite a lot quietly and silently, but it isn't at the forefront. It isn't being recognized because it's not as glamorous as you know, the big bottom line figures, etc. But making a point to recognize those efforts and celebrate those efforts, make a splash about it, which I think is part of Rebecca's campaign today, you know, with the crowdfunding efforts. Get excited about it, make a splash about it, you know, and get involved in little ways which will multiply and become something that is significant and something which is splashed onto the front pages, and eventually, before you know it, everyone will be talking about it. And it will no longer be an exception, it will become the norm.
Deirdre, if I may, I think what you said has been picked up in some of the comments and questions that are coming through. So I just wanted to quickly share. So Roma is just sharing that, you know, expecting Black people, other BAME professionals to constantly share their lived experience is exhausting and can be triggering. There's a huge amount of information out there which doesn't require us to constantly relive our trauma. And I think that's just, it picks up on another question that's come in about focusing on, as you were saying, Deirdre, promoting the positives. So this is from Robert. The focus is typically about eliminating the negatives, and rightly so, but can we also focus on promoting the positives? So where there are diverse and inclusive business successes, role models, there's a new Californian law mandating racial diversity on corporate boards. So he's asking for your views on how we can you know, lobby to inject this positivity into corporate cultures, values and legislation. And then there's a second question from Precious, which is talking about, you know, are the leaders ready for change? So what would be your thoughts on this talking more about the positives? How does the panel feel about that?
Oh, Carol, we are solutions focused here, so that we're all about the positives. And Robert has, I mean, you know, I have no idea where that young man is from, but I also recently posted on LinkedIn a new law instigated in California that talks about racial diversity at board level legislation. And, you know, I know it's a very emotive subject, this whole thing about quotas and targets, but actually I've been saying it for a while now, quotas of excellence are a different phenomenon. You know, many of us on this call, including yourself and Terry, we are the top of our game. by definition, still overlooked. So what does that say? We've got to move beyond, if it takes legislation and it's friendly legislation and it improves the environment, why not? You know, the role model piece, the singing about what works well. Yeah, to Deirdre's point, there's lots of great work out there at grassroots level, not being seen or heard. I agree. But it's a two-way conversation. We can't have all of this great stuff coming up and then when it hits a certain level, it stops, because beyond that, it's a foreign conversation. That's where we have disconnect. So, Alan, what's your point on Robert's suggestion about legislation and promoting more of the positives?
I think that's what we're doing by being here, is being positive. Yeah. All of us in our careers, in our professions, where we are, the journeys we've taken, we're being positive by putting this to the table and say, what can we do? Let's stop talking. Let's take action. And the time is now. And I think that's a great positive stride. And to your point, Bola, I was going to talk about the quarters of excellence, which is a very good way of having visible results from businesses to say, this is what we are going to do in 3 years' time. This is our target. It's part of our strategy. We're going to make sure we have 3 or 4 board directors from the BAME community. You know, and I think that's critical. I think that's where we need to be heading. That's the action that's required. We need to have visible results so that that change is impacted. And I think that's a positive move, to be able to say, okay, let's have these uncomfortable conversations. Let's challenge the businesses, because that's what businesses are there to do, to provide solutions, to try and get, like Larry said, grassroots in, but not just to tick the box on the strategy, but to say, okay, we've had 10 people in. How are we going to track them to achieve their personal goals, but also to benefit the business and to grow them? And I think that's where the win-win situation is. It's a two-way, you know. And for me, that's how I would look at it. That would be my approach in essence.
Larry.
Yeah, I was just about to say that in terms of positivity, again, by showing and demonstrating on the panel that Black people, BAME people are able to achieve, and they're out there, they are employable, they're doing the work. So yeah, it is all positive. And in terms of my own self, with regards to how we incorporate that in our own business, you know, again, going into schools, working with the communities that you know, that we engage with, either through clients, through community groups, etc. So, and I think that's a big part of a business, for it to embrace and show that it has social values and has community values. Those things that you advised so long ago, what did you say, about 10 years ago or so, you know, that they're not just put on the shelf, that businesses are not just listening and putting them on the top shelf, that they're actually embracing these ideas and putting them forward and having them as a solid core of their business.
We're coming into the last 1.5 minutes of this session. I just wanted to very quickly say a really great positive comment has come in from Shona. A tipping point is happening this year, and I think we all feel this. Something has changed, something is changing, and it's no longer waiting for the big boys and the other big boys at the top to say, yes, we will do this. It's actually this bottom up. And Shona says in some areas it's top down, in other places it's bottom up. She gets it, the wariness, because we've all been having this conversation for a very long time, but many people are new to understanding this and they are tackling it. And that positivity just means a lot. We are pretty much out of time. Bola, would you like to close, wrap up, say a last sentence or two?
Well, look, first of all, I want to thank all the panelists, because, you know, I didn't twist your arm, but I just said, look, be yourselves. And I think you've done a great job as what I call DCS ambassadors. You know, we are crowdfunding, we want to grow, we want to work with building people, we're part of the ecosystem, so please donate to the crowdfunding. And just generally, I'm just saying, as an individual, I'm tired of this conversation. I really am. What I want to see is action. You know, I've had a journey that has a story. We all have a story, but actually it's those coming behind me that worries me. If we don't get it right now, 5, 10, 20 years time, we're going to have the same conversation. So, you know, let's make it positive. Let's make it tangible. Terry shared some great actions here that I'm going to communicate through all of us as some of the quick wins, the low hanging fruit we talk about. But, you know, let's have some fun because it's about people, right? We've got to smile and love what we do. So thanks for giving us a platform.